Some legends are remembered because they demanded attention. Others are remembered because the game couldn't function without them. He never chased the spotlight, never asked for recognition, and never tried to be more than what the team needed. Yet when the Pittsburgh Steelers needed certainty, when a season hung on one play, they looked for number 83. Heath Miller didn't build his legacy with celebrations or sound bites. He built it with third-down catches, red zone trust, and blocks no one applauded. While stars rose and faded around him, he stayed the same, quiet, dependable, and always ready when chaos arrived. This is the story of a man who never tried to be famous, but became a Steelers legend anyway. A two-time Super Bowl champion, a safety valve in the biggest moments, a player whose value was measured not in noise, but in trust. Welcome to Black and Gold Legacy, a channel dedicated to preserving the real stories behind Pittsburgh Steelers history. The forgotten sacrifices, the quiet warriors, the moments that didn't need celebration to matter. If you believe true greatness isn't always loud, if you respect players who put the team above themselves, and if Black and Gold runs in your blood, like, share, and subscribe, because legends like Heath Miller deserve to be remembered. Early life, built for responsibility, not fame. Long before Heath Miller became a trusted name in Pittsburgh, his foundation was built far away from bright lights and packed stadiums. He grew up in rural Virginia in an environment where work mattered more than recognition. Success wasn't measured by applause, but by consistency. From an early age, Miller was taught to show up prepared, respect his role, and finish what he started. Sports became a reflection of those values. Whether it was football or basketball, Miller wasn't drawn to attention. He focused on fundamentals, catching cleanly, blocking correctly, and understanding the game rather than trying to dominate it. Coaches noticed his mindset early. He listened more than he spoke. He learned quickly, and most importantly, he was dependable. When assignments were given, they were completed. When mistakes happened, they were corrected. One youth coach later remarked that Miller played with a maturity beyond his age. He wasn't flashy, but he was always in the right place. That reliability began to separate him from others who relied on raw talent alone. Those early years shaped everything that followed. Heath Miller wasn't chasing greatness, he was learning how to earn trust, a lesson that would define his entire career. College dominance without the spotlight. When Heath Miller arrived at the University of Virginia, there was no national hype following him. He wasn't marketed as a future star. What he brought instead was consistency, the kind that slowly changes how a program operates. Miller transitioned into the tight end role and immediately became a central part of the offense. He wasn't just a receiving option, he was a complete player. He blocked with effort, ran disciplined routes, and made difficult catches look routine. Game after game, his impact grew. Defenses knew the ball was coming his way, yet stopping him proved difficult. Miller's hands were reliable, his routes precise, and his football intelligence obvious. He didn't force plays, he finished them. By his junior season, Miller had become one of the most dependable players in college football. He led by example, not volume. Teammates trusted him. Coaches leaned on him in crucial situations. In 2004, Heath Miller won the John Mackey Award, given to the nation's best tight end. It was a rare honor, yet even then his rise remained quiet. There were no loud celebrations, no sudden fame, just respect. College football recognized his excellence. The spotlight simply didn't linger. But professional football was watching. The Steelers see what others missed. The 2005 NFL Draft wasn't about spectacle for Heath Miller. There were no dramatic storylines, no media frenzy attached to his name. But inside the Steelers organization, the evaluation was clear. They didn't see a flashy tight end, they saw reliability. The Steelers were coming off a season where balance mattered. They needed a player who could protect the quarterback, move the chains, and handle responsibility without drama. Heath Miller fit that vision perfectly. When Pittsburgh selected Miller in the first round, it wasn't about star power, it was about culture. Bill Cowher valued toughness, intelligence, and selflessness, traits Miller had already proven at Virginia. From the moment he arrived, expectations were different. Rookie tight ends rarely make an immediate impact. The position demands blocking, route discipline, and an understanding of defensive schemes. Miller embraced all of it. He studied relentlessly. He worked with veteran linemen to refine his blocking. He earned Ben Roethlisberger's trust by running routes exactly where they were supposed to be, not where they looked impressive. Coaches noticed quickly. Miller didn't freelance, he didn't take shortcuts, he handled pressure with calm efficiency. By mid-season, he wasn't just part of the offense, he was essential to it. Pittsburgh didn't draft a star, they drafted a solution. And in doing so, they found a player who would quietly become one of the most important pieces of their championship era. Becoming Ben Roethlisberger's safety net. For a young quarterback in the NFL, trust isn't built with words, it's built in chaos. When Ben Roethlisberger entered the league, the Steelers' offense demanded discipline. Plays broke down, pressure came fast, and when protection failed, quarterbacks needed someone dependable, someone who would be exactly where he was supposed to be. That player became Heath Miller. Miller didn't demand targets. He didn't gesture for the ball. He simply ran his routes with precision and waited. Over time, Ben Roethlisberger began to recognize something rare. When the play collapsed, Miller didn't panic. On third downs, Miller found soft spots in coverage. In the red zone, he created separation with technique, not speed. When defenders closed in, his hands stayed steady. What made Miller invaluable wasn't just catching the ball, it was timing. He understood when to sit in zones, when to adjust routes, and when to make himself visible to his quarterback without forcing the issue. As seasons passed, their connection deepened. When Roethlisberger faced pressure, his eyes naturally found number 83. Not because Miller was the most explosive option, but because he was the safest. Coaches noticed the pattern. Defensive coordinators tried to disrupt it, but trust built over hundreds of reps doesn't disappear easily. Heath Miller became the offense's stabilizer, the player who kept drives alive and mistakes minimal. In a system built on control and toughness, his role was irreplaceable. He wasn't just a tight end, he was security, the quiet heart of the offense. Heath Miller was never the loudest voice in the huddle, but when the Steelers' offense needed stability, everything flowed through him. His value showed up in moments that rarely made highlight reels. Third and long situations where one clean catch kept a drive alive, red zone plays where his presence forced defenses to adjust, blocking assignments where he absorbed contact so others could shine. Miller understood that offense wasn't about individual glory, it was about rhythm. When plays broke down, he didn't improvise recklessly, he adjusted intelligently, giving his quarterback a reliable outlet. As a blocker, he embraced the most demanding part of his role. Linebackers tested him. Defensive ends tried to overpower him. Miller met them head-on. He took pride in doing the work few wanted credit for. That commitment made him indispensable. Offensive coordinators trusted him in every personnel package. Teammates leaned on his consistency, and defenses respected his presence even when the ball didn't come his way. He wasn't chasing numbers, he was protecting structure. Over time, his leadership became quiet but unmistakable. Younger players followed his example. Veterans trusted his preparation. He didn't need to speak loudly to be heard. Heath Miller became the offense's backbone, holding everything together while others received the applause. Super Bowl moments and championship football. Championship teams are built on stars, but they survive on reliability. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, Heath Miller became one of those players who mattered most when pressure reached its peak. During the team's Super Bowl runs, his role expanded beyond statistics. In Super Bowl XL, Miller was a stabilizing presence. He blocked defensive ends, chipped pass rushers, and made himself available when the offense needed control. His contributions didn't demand attention, they demanded trust. By the time the Steelers reached Super Bowl 43, Miller was a veteran leader. The game required precision. Every possession mattered. Miller's assignments were clear, and he executed them without hesitation. He didn't dominate headlines, he dominated responsibility. On critical downs, he ran disciplined routes. In protection, he absorbed contact so plays could develop. When defensive pressure mounted, Miller's presence calmed the offense. Championship football exposes weaknesses. Heath Miller had none that mattered. His consistency allowed others to take risks, knowing structure wouldn't collapse behind them. 2 Super Bowl rings weren't the result of flash, they were the reward for reliability. Pain, injuries, and the cost of consistency. Heath Miller's career wasn't defined by highlight reels. It was defined by durability. The tight end position demanded constant physical sacrifice. Blocking defensive ends, absorbing hits over the middle, and finishing plays through contact took a toll. Over the years, Miller's body paid the price. There was a stretch where simply walking after games required effort, where Sundays were survived, not played, and where the question wasn't how long he could play, but how much more his body could give. Serious knee injuries interrupted his career more than once. Each setback required months of rehabilitation, patience, and quiet determination. There were no dramatic comeback speeches, just work. Rehab meant early mornings and long days. Strength had to be rebuilt, confidence had to return, and through it all, Miller approached recovery the same way he approached football, methodically, without complaint. Even when healthy, pain was constant. Sundays were survived, not enjoyed, but availability mattered. Teammates depended on him, coaches trusted him. He didn't play through pain to prove toughness, he played because his role demanded it. In a league that celebrates speed and explosiveness, Miller endured through consistency. The cost was invisible to most fans, but inside the locker room, it was understood. This was the price of being dependable in the NFL, and Heath Miller paid it without asking for recognition. Retirement and the silence after football. When Heath Miller stepped away from the game, the noise didn't fade. It stopped. No press conference circuit, no prolonged goodbye. His retirement came the same way his career had been lived, quietly. One season, his life revolved around preparation, film sessions, practice schedules, game plans. The physical routine that had defined his identity for more than a decade vanished almost overnight. The stadium noise disappeared, Sundays changed, the structure that football had provided was suddenly gone. For a player who thrived on responsibility, the silence was heavy. There were no teammates in the huddle, no playbook to study, no weekly purpose shaped by kickoff times. Miller didn't chase the spotlight after football. He didn't try to extend relevance through media or commentary. He chose privacy, family, and normalcy, a sharp contrast to the intensity he had lived with for years. Fame fades quickly in professional sports. The transition tests identity, and for Miller, it was another challenge handled with humility. The game moved on, but his impact remained. A legacy built on trust. Heath Miller's legacy isn't measured by noise, controversy, or constant attention. It's measured by trust, the the kind that only grows over time and only belongs to players who never fail when it matters most. For more than a decade, he represented everything the Pittsburgh Steelers value: toughness without arrogance, leadership without ego, excellence without spectacle. Quarterbacks trusted him to be in the right place. Coaches trusted him to execute assignments precisely. Teammates trusted him to do the difficult work that allowed others to succeed. In franchise history filled with iconic names, Miller stands apart not because he demanded recognition, but because he never needed it. His impact was subtle, yet foundational. Drives stayed alive because of him. Big moments stayed under control because of him. Younger players learned by watching. Veterans leaned on his consistency. His presence raised the standard without ever announcing it. Heath Miller didn't redefine the tight end position. He perfected what it meant to be dependable. Years after his final snap, his influence remains woven into Steelers football, in the expectations, in the discipline, in the understanding that real greatness doesn't require attention. Some legends leave behind highlights, others leave behind a standard. Heath Miller left behind both, even if he never asked to be remembered. He never chased fame, he never demanded attention, and he never asked to be remembered. But football remembered him anyway. Heath Miller built his career the same way he lived it, with discipline, humility, and responsibility. In an era of noise, he chose consistency. In moments of pressure, he chose execution. And in a league that rewards flash, he proved that trust matters more. His legacy isn't found in celebrations or sound bites. It lives in third downs converted, in quarterbacks protected, in championships earned quietly. This was the story of a man who didn't try to be a legend, but became one because his team could never function without him. This is the Heath Miller story. You're watching Black and Gold Legacy, a channel dedicated to honoring the real builders of Pittsburgh Steelers history, the quiet warriors, the uncelebrated sacrifices, the standards that last long after the noise fades. If you believe football history should remember players like Heath Miller, like, share, and subscribe, because some legends don't make noise, they make teams better.